I told my girlfriend she's pathetic, and I'd jump off a bridge before I married her. I always thought my girlfriend's daughter Kayla didn't speak, because she was just shy and reserved. But then I saw how she looked walking through the front door after staying at her dad's over the weekend. Giggling, smiling, glowing, and carrying a huge stuffed unicorn. "I can't wait to see you more," she yelled after him. Her mom was furious. The instant her dad drove off, she sent Kayla upstairs and lost it. She marched around the house screaming like a psycho ex, yelling about who does her ex think he is turning Kayla against her like that. When I tried to tell her he just took her to the carnival and wasn't manipulating her, she looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Two can play that game." The next morning, I woke up to a sight still burned in my brain. My girlfriend with Kayla, practicing the words. He said it was our special game. I asked her what the hell she was doing, but she told me her ex needed to pay for what he did. I stood in shock watching my girlfriend fully convince her daughter that her dad had been touching her. Over the next 2 days, I watched her systematically destroy that little girl's mind. She'd wait until I left for work, but I started coming home early. I'd find them at the kitchen table. "Remember, sweetie, when daddy gives you a special bath? That makes you uncomfortable, right?" Kayla would shake her head, confused. By day 3, she'd moved on to physical coaching. I walked in on her showing Kayla how to flinch. "When they ask about daddy, you need to look scared like this." She demonstrated shrinking back. "Now you try." Kayla, 7 years old and desperate for her mom's approval, copied the movement. The worst part was how she'd been telling the dad that he could have primary custody since she wanted to focus on her career. SP was thrilled. I heard him on speaker once, talking about how he'd already set up Kayla's room, how his girlfriend had helped paint it her favorite. He had no idea his ex was about to accuse him of molesting their daughter in open court. The thing that made me snap was Thursday night. Kayla had finally broken completely. She was sobbing, begging her mom, "I don't want to lie about daddy." My girlfriend slapped her. Not hard enough to leave a mark, but hard enough. Then she held her while she cried, whispering, "Daddy did bad things. You're confused. Mommy's protecting you." That's when Kayla said something that chilled me. I wish I was dead like Grandma. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the dad. This guy who'd done nothing wrong, who sent child support early every month, who never missed a pickup, who was probably lying in bed next to his girlfriend right now, excited about having more time with his daughter, completely unaware that in 6 days his life would be over. They'd arrest him in court. He'd lose his job. His picture would be in the paper. I made my decision at 3 a.m. I took screenshots of everything on my girlfriend's phone while she slept, her notes app with the coaching scripts, the videos she'd taken of their practice sessions that she planned to delete before court, the text messages to her sister bragging about how she was going to destroy him. I created a throwaway email and sent everything to the dad. I told him to get a lawyer immediately, to file an emergency motion, to request a guardian ad litem for Kayla. I included the video where my girlfriend was clearly coaching Kayla to say, "Daddy touches my private parts," while Kayla cried and said, "But he doesn't." I also sent everything to CPS with a detailed timeline. I never got a response from him, but the next morning, my girlfriend woke up to her ex-husband's lawyer calling. My ears perked up immediately, and I could hear him talking about how he'd filed an emergency motion for full custody based on parental alienation and child abuse, that CPS was opening an investigation, that the court date was moved up to Monday, and that now it would be about her fitness as a parent, not his. I saw her stare at the ceiling like a deer in headlights. The puzzle pieces were turning, and when she saw me staring intently at her, she realized it. But she wasn't ashamed. No. Instead, she started crying, saying I'd ruined everything. She started throwing things at a wall and screaming that I'd chosen her abusive ex over her. She was so delusional she said I'd traumatized Kayla. I remember calling her pathetic, that she'd literally tortured her own child because she couldn't stand seeing her happy with her dad. Monday came. The judge reviewed everything in chambers. He saw the videos of the coaching, Kayla's therapist report from the emergency weekend session, where she immediately recanted everything once away from her mother. The dad's completely clean background check versus my girlfriend's documented manipulation. And that's how he made his decision. I'll never forget the words that came out when that gavel banged. Emergency custody is granted to the father effective immediately with supervised visitation, only for the mother pending full investigation by Child Protective Services. The judge's voice cut through the courtroom, and my girlfriend's face went from confused to white as copy paper. Her mouth opened and closed like she was trying to form words, but nothing came out. The judge kept going, saying the evidence showed clear coaching and manipulation that put the child at serious risk. He said Kayla would go home with her dad right after court, and my girlfriend would need a supervisor present for any visits. I felt my whole body go weak with relief, but also this sick feeling in my stomach. My girlfriend jumped up from her chair so fast, it fell backward with a crash. "This is wrong," she screamed at the judge. "You don't understand what he's done." The bailiff moved toward her and put his hand up to stop her from approaching the bench. She spun around and pointed right at me sitting in the back row. "He's lying. He made all this up because he chose my ex over me." People in the courtroom turned to look at me, and I just sat there frozen. The judge banged his gavel and told her lawyer to control his client, or she'd be held in contempt. Her lawyer grabbed her arm and tried to pull her back to her seat, but she kept screaming that I was a traitor who destroyed her family. The bailiff had to step between us when she tried to come toward me. They basically dragged her out a side door, still yelling about how everyone was against her and didn't care about protecting Kayla. Outside the courthouse, I stood by my car trying to process what just happened when Kayla's dad walked up. His eyes were all red and puffy, and before I could say anything, he grabbed my hand with both of his. "You saved my daughter's life," he said, his voice breaking. "You saved mine too." He kept shaking my hand and thanking me over and over, saying he'd been ready to give up when he got my email. He said without the evidence I sent, they would have arrested him and he'd never have seen Kayla again. His girlfriend was there too, and she hugged me, crying and saying I was an angel. I didn't feel like an angel, though. I felt sick about the whole thing. My phone started going crazy with text messages before I even got to my car. Her sister was calling me every name in the book, saying I was a piece of garbage who betrayed family. Her mom sent a long message about how I'd regret this, and they'd make sure everyone knew what kind of person I really was. More texts kept coming from numbers I didn't recognize, all her family and friends saying I was a traitor who chose a child abuser over a good mother. One text from her sister said she'd already posted on social media about what I did and would make my life hell. I turned my phone off and drove home. Later that day, I went back to our apartment while she was still at the courthouse with her lawyer trying to figure out next steps. I couldn't stay there another night knowing what she'd done to that poor kid. I grabbed garbage bags from under the kitchen sink and started throwing my clothes in them. The whole place felt different now, like every room had bad memories. I packed my computer, my games, my books, everything I could fit in my car. I left the furniture since most of it was hers anyway. While I was packing, my phone rang from a number I didn't know. It was Vanessa Reed from CPS, saying she needed to schedule a follow-up interview about everything I'd witnessed. She said my evidence had been crucial to protecting Kayla, and they needed my full testimony for their investigation. She asked if I could come to their office tomorrow and give a recorded statement about the coaching sessions. She said what I'd documented was textbook parental alienation and psychological abuse. She thanked me for coming forward and said most people don't have the courage to report this kind of thing. After loading my car, I found a cheap motel off the highway that rented by the week. The room smelled like old cigarettes, and the bed was hard as a rock, but at least it was away from her. I sat on that bed feeling completely alone. Breaking up with someone is hard enough, but this felt like escaping from something way darker. I kept thinking about Kayla and wondering if she was okay with her dad now. I hoped she was confused but safe. The next morning, my phone rang early and woke me up. It was Brian Donovan introducing himself as the guardian ad litem the court appointed for Kayla. He explained his job was to represent Kayla's best interests, and he needed to talk to me about what I'd observed. He asked really specific questions about her behavior before and after the coaching. He wanted to know exactly what words my girlfriend used and how Kayla reacted. He said my observations would help him make recommendations to the court about what was best for Kayla going forward. 2 days later, I was at work trying to focus when security called saying someone was there demanding to see me. I knew right away it was her. Security said she was making a scene in the lobby, and they'd already told her to leave, but she wouldn't go. They had to threaten to call the police before she finally left. My boss pulled me aside later looking concerned about all the drama. When I explained it involved child protection, and I was a witness in a custody case, he understood and said to let him know if she showed up again. The next week, I met with Vanessa at the CPS office downtown. She had me go through everything from the beginning while she recorded it. I told her about the kitchen table sessions, the practice scripts, the slap, everything. She asked really detailed questions about dates and times and exactly what was said. She showed me some of the videos I'd sent and had me explain what was happening in each one. She said what my girlfriend did was textbook parental alienation and one of the worst cases of psychological abuse she'd seen. She said Kayla would need therapy for a long time to get over what her mom did to her. Vanessa said the investigation would probably take months, but my evidence made it clear Kayla wasn't safe with her mother. Brian called me the next day and asked if I could meet him at his office to go over some more details about what I'd seen. I drove downtown to the Family Services building and found his office on the 3rd floor. He had me sit in this old leather chair and pulled out a yellow legal pad. He asked me to walk through everything again, but this time he wanted exact words my girlfriend had used when coaching Kayla. I told him about the kitchen table sessions and how she'd say things like, "Daddy touches you in bad ways," while Kayla shook her head no. He wrote down every detail about the slap and asked me to repeat exactly what Kayla had said about wanting to be dead like Grandma. His face got really serious when I told him that part. He asked if I'd be willing to testify about all this in court if needed, and I said yes. The next morning, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize, and when I answered, it was my girlfriend's lawyer. He started off friendly, saying there might have been some confusion about what I thought I saw. He suggested that maybe I'd misunderstood the situation and that my girlfriend was just trying to protect her daughter. I cut him off and told him I had videos of the whole thing. There was silence on the other end for a few seconds before he said something about how videos can be misinterpreted. I told him the videos were pretty clear when she was coaching her daughter to lie about abuse that never happened. He tried to keep talking, but I hung up on him. 3 days later, I got a text from Brian letting me know that the judge had ordered my girlfriend to undergo a full psychological evaluation. The court wanted to know if she was mentally fit to have any custody of Kayla at all. He said this was a big deal because it meant the judge was taking the abuse allegations seriously. The evaluation would take a few weeks, but it would look at her mental state and whether she could be a safe parent. That same afternoon, Kayla's dad texted me with an update about how she was doing. He said she was having bad nightmares and kept asking if mommy was mad at her. She was confused about what was real and what her mom had made her say. He'd found a specialist who worked with kids who'd been through trauma and got her in right away. The therapist said it would take time, but kids are strong, and Kayla would get through this. He thanked me again for saving them both. Over the next few days, my phone started blowing up with calls from people we both knew. Some mutual friends wanted to know what really happened because my girlfriend was telling everyone I'd turned on her for no reason. A few believed me right away when I explained about the coaching videos. Others said I was wrong to get involved and that I'd betrayed a good mother who was just confused. One of her friends actually screamed at me that I'd ruined a family. I stopped answering calls from numbers I didn't know after that. My landlord called me at work to say my girlfriend had shown up at my new place claiming she needed to get her things. She tried to convince him she still had stuff in my apartment and needed to get in. He told her she couldn't go in without me there and she'd gotten really mad. He said she'd stood in the hallway yelling that I'd stolen from her before he threatened to call the cops. He wanted to make sure I knew in case she came back. I thanked him for not letting her in. About a week later, I got a call from Brian saying that Dr. Clara Sanchez wanted to talk to me. She was Kayla's new therapist and needed to understand the timeline of what happened. Brian gave her my number and she called that afternoon. She asked really specific questions about when the coaching started and what exact words were used. She said Kayla was slowly starting to understand the difference between what really happened and what her mom had told her to say. She said it was important for Kayla's recovery that everyone was consistent about the truth. She thanked me for documenting everything because it helped her know how to help Kayla heal. A week into the new custody arrangement, I found out my girlfriend had already messed up her supervised visit. The supervisor called Brian, who then called me to let me know what happened. During the visit at the family center, my girlfriend had tried to whisper to Kayla that she needed to tell everyone Mommy didn't do anything wrong. The supervisor heard her and immediately ended the visit. She wrote up a report for the court about the violation. This meant my girlfriend might lose even supervised visits if she kept trying to manipulate Kayla. My phone wouldn't stop ringing with calls from her family, so I finally had to change my number. Before I did, I listened to some of the voicemails her mom left. She said I'd destroyed their family and that I'd pay for what I'd done. She called me every name she could think of and said I'd ruined her daughter's life. Her sister left messages saying I was a terrible person who'd chosen a deadbeat dad over a loving mother. They had no idea what really happened and didn't want to know. The harassment was getting so bad I was looking over my shoulder everywhere I went. 2 weeks after everything started, Vanessa called me with some shocking news. During their investigation, CPS had found out this wasn't the first time my girlfriend had made false abuse claims. She'd accused a previous boyfriend of hitting her kid from another relationship years ago. That case had been dropped when investigators found out she was lying. Vanessa said this pattern was really concerning and would definitely come up in court. She said it showed my girlfriend had a history of using false allegations to hurt people she was mad at. My phone started buzzing like crazy that same afternoon with Facebook notifications from people I hadn't talked to in years. My mom called me crying, asking why her sister's friend had just sent her a link to a post, calling me a child abuser who protected pedophiles. My girlfriend's sister had gone on a rampage online, posting everywhere that I was dangerous around kids and had taken the side of a man who touched his own daughter. She tagged everyone we knew, my workplace, even my old college roommates. I spent 3 hours on the phone with my parents walking them through everything, sending them the videos I'd saved, explaining how my girlfriend had coached Kayla to lie. My dad kept asking how I'd gotten mixed up with someone so crazy. The next morning, Brian called with news that made my stomach turn. He said Dr. Sanchez had been working with Kayla, and the little girl had started opening up about other times her mom made her say things that weren't true. There was an incident with a daycare teacher her mom didn't like where Kayla had to tell people the teacher was mean to her. Another time with a neighbor who complained about noise, and Kayla had to say the neighbor's dog scared her so bad she couldn't sleep. Brian said this pattern went back years, and Kayla was just now understanding that lying was wrong, even when Mommy asked her to do it. I started seeing my girlfriend everywhere after that. She'd be sitting in her car outside the grocery store when I came out with my bags, standing across the street from my gym just watching the door. One time I walked out of a restaurant with coworkers, and she was at the bus stop staring right at me. She never said anything, just watched with this blank look on her face. My hands would shake every time I saw her car. I finally went to see a lawyer about getting a restraining order. He looked at all my documentation and said we had a good case, especially since I was a witness in an ongoing custody matter. He filed the paperwork that week. 2 weeks after the emergency custody order, we all had to go back to court for a longer hearing about temporary custody while the full investigation continued. I had to take the whole day off work. The courtroom was packed with social workers, lawyers, and family members. I sat in the witness waiting room for 3 hours before they called me in. When I took the stand, the dad's lawyer asked me to describe everything I'd seen in detail. I told them about finding the practice scripts in her phone that went back months before that carnival weekend. She'd written out whole conversations for Kayla to memorize about being touched in the bathtub, about special games, about keeping secrets from Mommy. The dates on those notes proved she'd been planning this false accusation for a long time, way before she got mad about the carnival. I showed them screenshots where she'd practiced different versions of the story, trying to figure out which one sounded most believable. The judge looked sick reading through them. My girlfriend lost it when I was testifying. She jumped up screaming that I was making everything up, that I'd doctored the evidence, that I was the real abuser trying to cover my tracks. Her lawyer grabbed her arm trying to get her to sit down, but she kept yelling that everyone was against her. The judge had to bang his gavel 3 times before she finally stopped. He ordered her to have 0 contact with me as a witness in an active case. She screamed one more time that I'd ruined her life before her lawyer basically dragged her back to her seat. The bailiff moved closer to their table after that. That evening, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Kayla's dad's girlfriend calling to thank me. She said Kayla had started smiling again in the past 2 weeks, actually smiling like a normal kid. She was sleeping through most nights without waking up crying. She'd stopped asking if she did something bad to make mommy mad. The girlfriend said they'd bought Kayla a new bike, and she'd actually gotten excited about it instead of asking if it was okay to be happy. She thanked me for saving that little girl's life. A few days later, Brian called with the results of my girlfriend's court-ordered psychological evaluation. The psychologist found she had serious narcissistic traits and couldn't see Kayla as a separate person from herself. When Kayla was happy without her, she saw it as a personal attack. The evaluator said she needed years of intensive therapy before she could safely have unsupervised time with any child. The report recommended only therapeutic supervised visits in a clinical setting for the foreseeable future. Brian also had to tell me something else. My girlfriend had started spreading rumors that I'd been inappropriate with Kayla, trying to flip everything around. She'd called CPS with a complaint about me, told people at her work that I was the real predator. Luckily, all the evidence, the timeline, and the fact that I'd reported everything myself made it clear these were just more false accusations from someone who couldn't accept responsibility. CPS dismissed her complaint immediately. The harassment and drama were getting to be too much. My boss pulled me aside the next Monday and said corporate had an opening at the branch 2 states away. Same position, same pay, but a fresh start where nobody knew about all this mess. They understood if I wanted to take some time to think about it, but the offer was there if I needed to get away from everything. I spent the whole night thinking about that offer while packing boxes in my apartment. 3 weeks had passed since the first court hearing, and everything felt like it was moving so fast. Clara called me that Tuesday with an update about Kayla's progress in therapy. She said the kid was finally starting to understand that loving her dad didn't mean betraying her mom. The sessions were helping her work through all the confusion my girlfriend had put in her head. Clara told me Kayla would need years of therapy to fully heal from what her mother did to her. The same day, Vanessa from CPS called with their final report. They'd found clear evidence of emotional abuse and psychological maltreatment by the mother. Their official recommendation was sole custody for the dad, with only supervised therapeutic visits for the mom. The investigation file was thick with all the evidence I'd provided, plus their own findings from interviews. I made my decision about the job transfer that night. Packing up my life into cardboard boxes felt strange but necessary. Every item I wrapped reminded me of better times before I knew what my girlfriend was capable of. The movers came Thursday morning and loaded everything into their truck. I'd already signed the lease on a new place 2 states away where nobody knew this story. Saturday afternoon changed everything when I went to grab groceries before leaving town. My girlfriend was there in the cereal aisle and started screaming the second she saw me. She yelled that I'd stolen her daughter and ruined her life. Other shoppers backed away as she followed me through the store. She kept screaming that I was a monster who'd turned everyone against her. The store manager called the cops when she grabbed my arm and wouldn't let go. 2 officers showed up within minutes and recognized her name from their briefings. She told them I was the real abuser who'd been grooming Kayla all along. The officers just shook their heads and cuffed her for violating the no-contact order. One of them told me they knew all about the case and her false accusations. They'd been warned she might try something like this. As they put her in the patrol car, she kept screaming that I'd pay for what I'd done. The arrest report would later show she'd been watching my apartment and followed me to the store. Brian called me the next morning with news that made everything worth it. Kayla had finally opened up in therapy about how scared she'd been of her mother. She told Clara she knew lying about her dad was wrong, but was terrified of losing her mom's love. The poor kid had been carrying so much guilt about the lies her mother forced her to practice. Brian said Kayla cried for an hour straight when she realized she didn't have to lie anymore. He also told me the final custody hearing was set for next month. Everyone involved already knew how it would end based on all the evidence. The dad had done everything right, and Kayla was thriving in his care. Her behavior had improved dramatically in just 3 weeks away from her mother's manipulation. I started seeing a therapist myself after moving to the new city. Sitting in that first session felt weird, but I needed to process what I'd witnessed. The therapist listened to my whole story without judgment. She told me what I'd done took incredible courage, even though I didn't feel brave. She helped me understand that my guilt about not acting sooner was normal but misplaced. We worked through how watching a mother destroy her own child had affected me. The sessions helped me stop replaying those kitchen table coaching scenes in my head every night. Meanwhile, my ex-girlfriend's family finally stopped their harassment campaign. Their lawyer had warned them they could face criminal charges for the threatening messages. My phone stopped buzzing with angry texts and voicemails from her mother and sister. The silence felt strange after weeks of constant attacks and accusations. Her family had been so convinced I was the villain in their story. They couldn't accept that their daughter and sister had tortured a 7-year-old child. Part of me understood their denial since the truth was so ugly. Then Monday morning, I got a text from Kayla's dad that made me smile for the first time in weeks. He'd sent a video from Kayla's new school playground during recess. She was laughing with 2 other girls on the swings, her hair flying in the wind. Another clip showed her showing off a drawing to her teacher with a huge grin. She looked nothing like the scared, confused girl I'd watched being coached at that kitchen table. The transformation in just 3 weeks was incredible to see. Her dad texted that she was making friends and doing well in her new routine. She'd even joined the school's art club and loved showing him her projects. He thanked me again for saving both their lives from what could have happened. A friend from work pulled me aside the next day and showed me my ex's Facebook page on her phone. She'd been posting these long rants about how the system failed her and everyone was against her. Every post painted her as this heroic mother trying to protect her baby from a predator, while corrupt officials and her manipulative ex-boyfriend worked together to steal her child. The comments were full of people who didn't know the real story offering support and saying how brave she was. Some were even sharing fundraising links she'd set up for her legal defense. I scrolled through post after post where she rewrote history completely. In her version, I'd been secretly working with her ex all along to take Kayla away. She claimed I'd doctored the videos and that the coaching sessions were actually her trying to help Kayla process real trauma. The delusion ran so deep that I think she actually believed her own lies by this point. 2 days later, Clara called me at work. She thanked me for having the courage to come forward when so many people stay silent. She told me she'd seen dozens of cases where parental alienation went on for years because nobody wanted to get involved. Kids ended up with permanent psychological damage, sometimes developing personality disorders or severe depression. She said my intervention probably saved Kayla from a lifetime of therapy and trust issues. Her words helped ease some of the guilt I'd been carrying about not acting sooner. That same afternoon, Brian called with news that made my stomach drop. The prosecutor had reviewed all the evidence and decided to file criminal charges against my ex for child abuse and filing a false police report. This meant the whole thing would drag on even longer with a criminal trial. I'd have to testify again, relive everything in front of a jury. The thought of going through it all again exhausted me, but I knew I had to see it through for Kayla. My transfer finally came through, and I packed up my apartment over the weekend. Loading boxes into the moving truck felt like closing a dark chapter. The new city was 3 states away, far enough that I wouldn't run into anyone from this mess. But even after settling into my new place, I couldn't shake what I'd witnessed. Some nights I'd be watching TV and suddenly hear Kayla's voice in my head saying she wished she was dead. I'd wonder what kind of mother could push her 7-year-old daughter to that point. The image of my ex coaching her at the kitchen table haunted me. How she'd calmly demonstrated the flinch. How she'd practiced those awful words with her daughter like they were rehearsing for a school play. 6 weeks after that first emergency hearing, Brian called to let me know the final custody hearing was scheduled. I booked a flight back immediately. This was it, the final determination of Kayla's future. I spent the flight going over my notes, making sure I remembered every detail clearly. The courthouse looked the same as I walked up those steps again. Inside, I saw my ex at the defendant's table with her lawyer. She'd lost weight, and her hair looked unwashed. Her lawyer was shuffling through papers frantically. When they called me to testify, I walked to the stand trying not to look at her. The prosecutor had me go through everything again, but this time with even more detail. Her lawyer stood up for cross-examination and immediately started arguing that my ex had genuine concerns about abuse. He claimed she was just a worried mother trying to protect her child. But when the judge asked for any evidence of actual abuse beyond the coaching videos, they had nothing. No medical records, no prior complaints, no witnesses, nothing except the lies she'd tried to force Kayla to tell. The judge took less than an hour to make his decision. When he came back, his words were clear and final. Sole legal and physical custody to the father. The mother would have supervised therapeutic visits only and only if the therapist deemed it beneficial for Kayla. My ex collapsed in her chair, sobbing and screaming that this wasn't fair, that they were stealing her baby. Her lawyer tried to calm her down while the bailiff moved closer in case she lost control completely. Outside the courthouse, Kayla's dad was waiting by the steps. He walked over with tears streaming down his face and grabbed my hand with both of his. He told me Kayla had asked him to thank the nice man who helped her tell the truth. That broke something in me, and I started crying right there on the courthouse steps. He said she was doing so much better, that she was laughing again and making friends at the school. She'd stopped having nightmares about lying and was just being a normal kid. 3 months later, the criminal trial ended with my ex pleading guilty to reduced charges. The judge sentenced her to 5 years probation and mandatory therapy. She avoided jail time, but her nursing license was suspended. She'd lost her daughter, her career, and any credibility she'd ever had. The local paper ran a story about the case as a warning about parental alienation. Brian kept in touch and sent me updates about Kayla. 6 months after everything started, she was thriving in 2nd grade. She'd joined the school choir and made best friends with a girl named Ariane. Her therapist said she was processing everything well, and the nightmares had completely stopped. She was living full-time with her dad and his girlfriend, who Kayla had started calling her bonus mom. The supervised visits with her mother had been suspended after my ex showed up drunk to one and tried to convince Kayla that none of this was real. Disaster at the supervised visit. The court suspended all her contact with Kayla indefinitely. A few weeks later, I was scrolling through Facebook on my lunch break when a friend request popped up from someone named Sarah Mitchell with no profile picture and 0 friends. The message attached said she understood what she did wrong now and just wanted to talk. I knew it was my ex immediately from the way she wrote, that same manipulative tone pretending to be reasonable. I took a screenshot and blocked the account, then forwarded everything to the prosecutor handling her criminal case. The prosecutor thanked me and said this would help show she wasn't taking responsibility for her actions. Life in my new city was starting to feel normal again after months of looking over my shoulder. I'd been going to a coffee shop every morning before work, and the barista there started recognizing my order. We talked a little more each day, and eventually she asked if I wanted to grab dinner sometime. I was upfront with her about why I'd moved here, told her the whole story about my ex and what happened with Kayla. She listened without judgment and said my actions showed I had real integrity when it mattered most. We started dating slowly, both of us being careful since I was still processing everything. The following Christmas, a card showed up at my forwarding address with Kayla's dad's return label. Inside was a photo of Kayla on stage wearing angel wings and a huge smile, holding a microphone at what looked like a school play. His note said she'd auditioned all by herself and got the lead role, that she was coming out of her shell more every day. The irony hit me hard. This little girl who'd been through hell playing an angel, but seeing her happy face made me tear up right there in my kitchen. My therapy sessions were helping me work through the guilt I carried about not stepping in sooner. My therapist kept reminding me that I did act when I saw the worst of it, that many people would have stayed silent to avoid the mess. She helped me understand that wishing I'd done things differently was normal, but I'd ultimately protected a child when she needed it most. The sessions weren't easy, bringing up all those memories of watching Kayla get coached and manipulated, but slowly I started forgiving myself. Meanwhile, the criminal case against my ex was moving through the system. The prosecutor called to update me that she'd taken a plea deal to avoid trial. She pled guilty to reduced charges of child endangerment and filing a false police report. The judge gave her 5 years probation, mandatory therapy sessions twice a week, and she had to register as a child abuser. That record would follow her forever, showing up on every background check, making it impossible for her to work with kids again. 2 years passed and my life looked nothing like it had before. I'd gotten promoted at my new job, my relationship was solid and healthy, and I'd made real friends who knew my whole story and respected what I'd done. The nightmares had stopped, the constant anxiety had faded, and while the memories were still there, they didn't control my days anymore. My girlfriend and I had moved in together, and she'd helped me realize that going through something that dark had actually made me stronger, more aware of red flags, more willing to stand up when something was wrong. Brian called me one last time about 3 years after everything started. He wanted me to know that Kayla was thriving as a 10-year-old. She loved soccer and had joined the art club at the school. Her grades were great, and she'd made a best friend named Ariane who came over for sleepovers every weekend. Her dad had married his girlfriend, and Kayla called her mom now, had completely bonded with her. The therapy had worked incredibly well, and while Kayla remembered what happened, she understood it wasn't her fault and had processed the trauma in healthy ways. Brian said she was just a normal, happy kid living her best life, exactly what she deserved. Sitting here now, 4 years later, I think about that scared little girl at the kitchen table being forced to lie about her dad. I think about how close she came to losing everything, how her dad almost had his life destroyed by false accusations. I remember the terror in her voice when she said she wished she was dead. Then I think about that Christmas card photo of her as an angel, the soccer team pictures Brian described, the art she was creating, the sleepovers with her best friend. Somewhere out there, a little girl is growing up safe and loved, because I chose to protect her instead of protecting myself, and that makes everything I went through worth it. Thanks for sticking with me through all my questions and wonderings. It's always so interesting exploring this stuff together. Until we meet again, take care. Subscribe for more content like this.